In economics, we are conditioned to fear the crash. We fear the sudden drop, the panic on the trading floor, the red arrows plunging down like a waterfall. We fear the heart attack. But there is something far worse than a heart attack. There is a condition where the heart doesn't stop, but it doesn't really beat either. A state where the body is technically alive, but unable to move, grow, or dream. In the 1990s, the second largest economy on Earth didn't explode, it simply froze. It entered a twilight zone of falling prices and aging people. They called it the lost decade, but 10 years became 20, and 20 became 30. Now, look at the headlines today. Look at the empty apartment towers in China. Look at the stalling factories in Europe. There is a trap waiting for the world's superpowers. It is the trap of the economic zombie, and once a nation walks into it, history suggests it never truly walks out. To understand why this is happening, we have to define what a zombie economy actually is. In biology, a zombie is the living dead. In finance, it isn't much different. A zombie company is a business that earns just enough money to pay the interest on its loans, but not enough to pay off the debt itself, and certainly not enough to invest in the future. It breathes, but it doesn't move. When you have thousands of these companies, you get a zombie economy. This happens when a nation refuses to take its medicine. Instead of letting bad companies fail during a crisis, the government pumps them full of cheap money. They keep them on life support. They choose comfort over pain. But comfort has a price. That price is deflation. That price is stagnation. We saw this destroy Japan's future. But today, the alarm bells are ringing elsewhere. From the ghost cities of the Chinese property sector to the deindustrializing heartlands of Germany, the symptoms are appearing again. So, let us rewind to where this disease started, to the time when Tokyo was ready to buy the world, right before it turned into a graveyard of ambition. If you weren't there, it is hard to imagine the euphoria of Japan in 1989. Japan wasn't just rich. It was invincible. Japanese corporations were buying iconic American landmarks: Columbia Pictures, the Rockefeller Center. At the peak of the bubble, the land under the Imperial Palace in Tokyo was reportedly worth more than the entire state of California. Money was free. Confidence was infinite. But it was built on a mountain of bad debt. When the Bank of Japan finally raised interest rates to cool the fever, the bubble didn't just leak. It shattered. Here is where the zombie was born. In a normal capitalist cycle, when a bubble bursts, companies go bankrupt. It is painful. It is brutal. But it clears the rot so new growth can begin. Japan refused to let the rot clear. The government and banks, terrified of mass unemployment and shame, kept lending money to insolvent companies. They pretended the loans were good. They extended deadlines. They pretended everything was fine. By keeping the weak companies alive, they drained resources from the strong ones. Innovation died because no one invested in the future. They were too busy paying for the past. Prices started to fall. Why buy a house today if it will be cheaper tomorrow? Why invest in a factory if the population is shrinking? Japan entered a deflationary spiral. The 1990s were lost, then the 2000s. Today, Japan's GDP is roughly where it was 30 years ago. They are a wealthy society, yes. But they are a society frozen in time, a beautiful museum. And they made the classic mistake. They thought they could print their way out of a structural problem. When we analyze the Japanese model and compare it to history, we see a terrifyingly clear 5-stage pattern. This is the recipe for creating a zombie economy. First, you have stage 1, the debt-fueled bubble. Growth is driven not by productivity, but by leverage. Real estate prices detach from reality. Everyone feels rich, so everyone spends. Then comes stage 2, the burst and the denial. The bubble pops. But instead of accepting the losses, the government steps in. They say, this is just a liquidity crisis. They refuse to let the market crash. This leads to stage 3, the life support phase. Interest rates are slashed to zero. Banks are ordered to keep lending to too-big-to-fail giants. These are the zombies. They suck up capital, labor, and market share, preventing new, agile competitors from rising. Stage 4 is the deflationary mindset. Consumers realize the party is over. They stop spending. Prices drop. Companies earn less, so they pay less. Becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy of decline. And finally, stage 5, the demographic cliff. This is the nail in the coffin. As the economy stagnates, young people lose hope. They delay marriage. They have fewer children. The workforce shrinks, leaving fewer workers to support more retirees. The debt burden per person explodes. Japan completed all 5 stages. And right now, the contagion is spreading. Look at the world's second-largest economy today, China. For decades, China's growth was the envy of the world. But look closer at the pattern. Stage 1. Check. China experienced the largest real estate bubble in human history. Apartments were built for people who didn't exist, financed by debt that can never be repaid. Stage 2 and 3, happening now. Property giants like Evergrande have collapsed, but the state is maneuvering desperately to prevent a total washout. They are keeping the system on life support, terrified of social unrest. But the most alarming parallel is stage 5, demographics. China is aging faster than almost any society in history due to the one-child policy. Japan got old after it got rich. China is at risk of getting old before it gets rich. And it is not just Asia. Look at Europe. Germany, the engine of Europe, is sputtering. High energy costs, an aging workforce, and a refusal to modernize its industrial base have left it vulnerable. The European Central Bank has kept rates low for years, creating legions of zombie firms across the continent. We are seeing the Japanification of the global economy. The scary part? Japan had the rest of the world to export to during its lost decades. If China and Europe stagnate at the same time, who is left to buy the goods? So, what happens if this pattern completes? The consequence isn't a Hollywood apocalypse. It is something more suffocating. It is the silent depression. In a zombie economy, your standard of living doesn't plummet overnight. It slowly erodes. Wages stay flat for decades. Taxes rise relentlessly to pay for the elderly and the interest on national debt. Innovation stops because big, protected monopolies kill off the startups. The social contract breaks. The young look at the old and realize, we are working to pay for your mistakes. If China enters a lost decade, it drags the global economy down with it. Commodity prices crash. Emerging markets that rely on selling to China collapse. And for the U.S., the danger is contagion. When the rest of the world stops growing, the U.S. becomes the only game in town. Driving the dollar up, killing exports, and eventually importing the deflationary sickness. The trap is set. The door is closing. The lesson of the lost decade is counterintuitive. To survive, an economy must be allowed to bleed. Pain is information. Bankruptcy is the cleaning fire that allows the forest to regrow. By trying to save everyone, we risk saving no one. By trying to banish the winter, we prevent the spring. The question isn't whether the bubble will burst. The question is, do we have the courage to let it fall? Or will we choose the comfort of the zombie, walking dead into the future? History says the latter. But maybe this time we will learn. If you want to understand the patterns before they play out, make sure you're subscribed. I'm Economy Rewind. See you in the next cycle.